first thing is who we are. So we are Praj Industries Ltd, based out of Pune, and these are the various accolades or accomplishments of the company over last several years. I think most of these details are available on the website of the company, so no need to repeat it. Now, broad contents of the presentation. One is India's climate change commitments during COP26, COP27. Then biofuel, a critical element for fulfillment of climate change goals set by India, both during 26 and 27 summit. Lastly, the core discussion is the challenges faced by biofuels industry, especially in India. Now, in interest of time, I'll quickly run through some of these slides because detailed discussion will be required at the time of actual financial challenges being faced by the biofuel industry. So today, we rank third in terms of GHG emission. Most of you could be knowing it. Both in terms of energy consumption, so also in terms of GHG emission, we rank third in the world, followed by China and United States. Now, if you recall, during COP26, we have 5 nectar elements, which is Panchamrit, which touched upon reach 500 gigawatt non-fossil energy capacity by 2030, meet at least 50% of energy requirements from renewable sources, again by 2030, reduce total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons from now till 2030, reduce carbon intensity of the economy by 50% almost by 2030 over 2005 level, which is 0.47 metric ton per $1,000 of GDP, and achieve target of net zero emission, which is very ambitious target by 2070. This was discussed during COP26. COP27, there was certain shift, and the emphasis was on increased use of biofuels, especially ethanol blending in petrol, EV penetration, and increased use of green hydrogen fuel, which has been aptly covered by Srini in his presentation. Focus on rational utilization of resources with due regard to energy security, and transition to low carbon development pathway, which will entail several costs pertaining to development of new technologies. So this was what was discussed during COP27 held very, very recently. Now this may be very primary, but I thought I should mention that what is biofuel is, fuel derived from feedstock that can be replenished readily is called biofuel. It is basically or fundamentally different from fossil fuels. Now biofuels, we have two categories. One is liquid form, which is technically called ethanol, and second is gaseous form, which is called compressed biogas. Now in ethanol, we have got 3 generation or 3 stages depending on development. We call it 1G technically, that is first generation ethanol, which is predominantly produced from crops from the fields such as cereals, broken rice, maize, sugar beet, cane, and rapeseed. Then second generation ethanol, which is advanced liquid biofuel. This is predominantly produced from non-food feedstock besides molasses. The feedstock could be like cellulosic and lignocellulosic material and agri-waste. Now let me tell you at this juncture, Praj Industries has been pioneer in establishing a technology for production of ethanol from these second generation sources. We have state-of-the-art R&D facility near Pune, which is first of its kind in Asia, and over 8 to 10 years of continuous research, we have been able to establish this technology, which is now patented. Third generation technology, ethanol, which is at a preliminary stage as compared to other two, which is basically concerned with the use of marine organisms such as algae, and it is at primary stage of development. When we talk of compressed biogas, it is produced naturally from waste or biomass like agri residue, cattle dung, sugar press mud, municipal solid waste, sewage treatment plant waste, etc. And it's compressed and called CBG with high methane content. Now, current energy and GHG emission scenario in India, in November 21, this data is as of November, India had renewable energy capacity of around 150 GW gigawatt. Solar was 50%, wind was 40%, small hydro was 4%, and large hydro 46, bio 10. These are not percent, these are absolute terms, and nuclear 7 gigawatt. Now, India has committed for a goal of 500 GW renewable energy by 2030, as mentioned by me earlier. Now, what produces major greenhouse gases? Economic sectors responsible for major emissions, GHG, are power, industry, agriculture, and transportation. Why I am laying more emphasis on transportation? Because when I talk about biofuel, it is basically to deal with transportation. Now, as per report released at the 27 COP, global carbon emissions are set to increase marginally in 22, with highest rise in India, which is projected. During 2021, emissions from oil sector doubled to 0.62 gigatons. Emissions from oil are set to increase sharply, projected increase of about 10%. So these are the global or macro indicators. Now, biofuel is critical for fulfillment of India's climate change. Why? Now, first thing is road transport, which basically involves use of fuel. This constitutes or accounts for 6 to 7% of our GDP. Out of total fuel, around 70% of the transport demand is met through diesel, and around 25 to 30% is met through petrol. This is average for over last several years. Now, as mentioned in earlier presentation, when it comes to use of petrol or diesel, it definitely involves import of crude oil, because indigenously we have only 17 to 18% crude oil produced, balance is imported. All said and done, even if we do all this, fossil fuels are highly polluting. You may be surprised to note that 1 liter of petrol generates 2.3 kgs of CO2. 1 liter of diesel generates 2.7 kgs of CO2, and 1 liter of ethanol generates around 1.5 kgs of CO2. So that is why the importance of blending. Now, having noted this, government came out during last 3-4 years and developed a lot of strategy and framework in terms of policy, which entailed blending of ethanol in petrol, then ethanol production from indigenous feedstocks. These aspects are dealt at length in National Biofuel Policy 2018, which was introduced to address all these concerns. Third element was development of second generation ethanol technologies. Next was pronouncement of appropriate financing measures, including availability of adequate capital and finance for these industries, adequate support for research and development and innovation for end use applications, and intervention for development of complete ecosystem. So the national policy on biofuels dealt with all these 6 aspects at length. As mentioned earlier, India's major target, ethanol blending 20% by 2025, and in order to achieve this, there are plans to set up as many as 5,000 compressed biogas plants. Now, in terms of money, what it has contributed, earlier our blending weighted average percentage was 5%, but with this policy coming in place, today we are at the level of 10% blending. Please remember, I am talking only about petrol. Diesel is very wide subject, so it is beyond the scope of this discussion. In fact, it was stated in the biofuels policy that it will be achieved by November 22, but I am happy to state that with the support from government, we have already achieved it much before the expected date or target date of November 22. What it means in terms of money for country, it has saved foreign exchange to the extent of rupees 41,500 crores or US $5.2 billion. GHG emission reduced by 2.7 million metric tons, and expeditious payment of 40,600 crore to farmers, which in terms of US dollar amounts to 5.1 billion. You may be aware that currently or of late the farmers have been just burning their agro residues, which used to pollute the air further. But because of this mechanism, not only the burning is prevented, the farmers are getting good money, the input is utilized in the second generation biofuel as input for production of second generation ethanol. So this way there is two-way positive impact on the economy. Now, arising out of this policy, there are a lot of opportunities which have happened or which are in the pipeline. India currently invests 4% of its GDP towards energy products. This is total, traditional plus clean energy projects. By 2030, 90% of the total annual spending on energy will be on clean energy and renewable energy. So traditional source, the dependence will keep on going down. Investment in direct use of renewables in buildings, industry, transport, especially bioenergy and biofuels, estimated to be reaching over US $10 billion annually by 2030. So much is the scope for this industry. To meet India's E20 blending norms, which is 20% blending in the petrol, as pronounced in 2018 policy, industry investment is expected to touch around 40,000 crore rupees, which is US $5 billion. Again, on compressed biogas front, expected investment of rupees 2 lakh crore, which is US $25 billion, which will produce 15 million metric tons of compressed biogas from bio and crop waste. So these are very, very ambitious targets set by the government. Let me quickly cover the policy support which is available today for this industry. I will quickly run through it. One is interest subvention, which indicates that the producer or manufacturer of ethanol gets some interest back from the government. You may be knowing that currently the rate of interest is around 10 to 12% roughly. So out of that, 50% they are getting back from the government in the form of interest subvention scheme. Second is viability gap funding. Now this new technology entails high capital cost. So in order to reduce the burden, the government has come out with viability gap funding, which is nothing but a subsidy given to the manufacturers of second generation bioethanol or biofuel. Then there is a scheme called Sustainable Alternative Towards Affordable Transportation, which is called SATAT. This is basically meant for compressed biogas plants. And then we have a price linked to feedstock prices. This is pricing support given by government to the manufacturers of ethanol. Now coming to the challenges, one is preferential ethanol pricing for advanced technologies is not available currently because it is in primitive stage. Now advanced technologies entail the capital expenditure which is 5 to 6 times than conventional technology. Typically for 100 KLPD distillery, the capex could be to the tune of 150 crores. But if I switch over to advanced technology, that is second generation, the capital cost could be as high as 700 to 800 crores because of various reasons. Then optimization to happen will need more investment because this capital cost cannot run forever. And hence preferential pricing policies will play a very, very crucial role to improve the viability or to further improve the viability of the advanced biofuel projects. So this is the first challenge which is being faced by the manufacturers of second generation biofuel. Second is today when the government decides price mechanism.
Sorry, sir, can we wrap in a minute?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Give me 5 minutes, please, because there are 2-3 important things to be explained. Currently, the government considers only marginal cost or variable cost while deciding the pricing policy. Now, as I explained earlier, since second generation entails higher capital cost, utilities such as power, fuel, and other direct costs, including interest, those should find place in the pricing mechanism, which is not happening today. If this is introduced, then and holistic approach is taken by the government, it will definitely further improve the viability of these projects. Then monetization of carbon credits, explained by Srinivas earlier, it will be a separate line item in the P&L account of these companies. It will help them reduce the cost of production. Coming to GST, today GST custom duty rate is 7.5%, GST average rate is 9 plus 9%. If it is imported, then IGST is 18%. Unfortunately, today there is no mechanism to get back these duties. And in ethanol industry, since the output rate is 5% and input rate is 18%, it leads to a phenomenon of accumulation of GST, for which there is no mechanism to get the refund from the government. So this is one more challenge which this industry is facing. Lastly, as covered in last session, if ESG is really implemented in its intended sense, it will really help all of us to abide by the stringent norms, okay, reduce the GHG emission, and which will ultimately serve the purpose of second generation biofuels. Now, the challenges have also to do with ecosystem development. On capacity building, we have biofuel production. Readiness will depend on funding for advanced technology, even by private sector. Today, this investment is restricted to government sector. There is no private player, predominantly oil marketing companies. Then availability of biomass and feedstock, demand creators, industry readiness for blending of biofuels to generate ethanol demand. For example, E2 compliant engines, flex fuel engines. So even if ethanol is produced, industry has to come forward to generate the demand. On supply side, OMC should have offtake arrangement with take or pay arrangement, which is not available for second generation biofuels today. So our strong recommendation is that this concept of take or buy should be extended to second generation biofuels as well. And pricing commitment, including logistics, which is mainly applicable to compressed biogas. Now, on distribution fronts, even if we have the concept of flex fuel vehicles, there should be separate outlets. Today, we are seeing big challenge in that, because if you go to fuel station, there is only one counter. Tomorrow, we will require 3-4 counters. So we need a lot of development on this front in order to consume the petrol with the help of this second generation bioethanol. Role of the bankers. Funds or products allocation for biofuels by private banks. Today, there are hardly any private players in this field. It is predominantly the nationalized banks which are funding these projects. So maybe the government can support the initial funding of 10,000 crore to get 200 plants of CBG, which is not happening now. Fund allocation for R&D projects to optimize advanced biofuel technology. Banking FIs to come together with industry and government for supporting the overall ecosystem, and banking policy and implementation of the same to be aligned with industry needs. So this is what I wanted to say about second generation biofuels and the challenges faced by biofuel companies. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.